Good morning. Welcome to the Gemini Effect. What is the Gemini Effect? It's where we're going to discuss the business and life of coaching. Carol, Heady, and I met about 8 months ago, and we didn't find out until last month that we are both Geminis. But it's been wild because we always said about each other that I'm the professional personal coach, the yin and yang, and Carol is the business coach. Hi, Carol. How are you today?
Hi, Jane. I'm well, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. We wanted to bring to you a topic called POP. What is POP? Point out the positive. We think it is so important at this time to pop. Every one of us needs to pop in business and in life. Carol, how do you think people pop in business? And tell us a little bit more about who you are in business and how you've been able to get people to pop.
Sure. A little bit of background, very briefly, and then, of course, we want you to do the same thing. So I thought about this today, and so I'm representing Leadership Chicks, which is actually a part of my my consulting practice. So Leadership Chicks focuses on women in leadership, entrepreneurs in leadership, certainly from the female perspective. And Learning and Performance Solutions is my business that I founded. Oh my gosh, it's going to be probably close to 20 years ago.
Wow.
And it's a training and consulting and coaching business. And so I became very interested in leadership from the perspective of how can we help women be more successful in leadership roles. So it's helping women develop those, what I call them core competencies, and really leveraging what women do well when it comes to leadership. So so I'm excited about today. Looking forward to talking about POP. Before we do that, why don't you share, your background as well in terms of, the type of coaching you do.
Yes, so I have 33 years of corporate America experience. I ran, for the last 18 years, I ran the loyalty program for business-to-business customers. Actually, I take that back. I ran that for 18 years, and for the last 2, I've been out of Verizon. But it gave me the foundation to go out and figure out what I wanted to do for the next half of my life. And so I discovered a coaching organization called the Center for Coaching Certification. And Kathy Liska teaches affirmation stories and mind mapping. And I realized that I could Jane Storm. And how did I come up with that name and my business practice? I was down in Florida with a company called Kobe Marketing who ran my loyalty program. And I walked into the room for creative, and on the wall was this huge sign, and it said Jane Storm. And I said, what is that? And they said, Jane, when you show up, we don't brainstorm, we Jane Storm, because you connect people to ideas better than anybody we know. And I was driving a year later and said, there's the name of my company. And from there, I started a momentum and a storm of Jane, and decided to go out with positivity, mind mapping affirmations for individuals and teams to inspire people to move them forward.
Great. Yeah, I'm so thrilled that we found each other, to be honest with you. I think we just create we create the Gemini effect, right? This parallel between business and life, and we're going to be providing those two perspectives through, through today's discussion. So let's get back to POP, because that's really what we want to share some thoughts around. And so when when we talked about that, a few things came to mind in terms of how that really works from a business perspective, and certainly in relationship to my experience with it. So pointing out the positive does 3 things, right? When we think about what motivates people, it's a universal motivator. That was the first thing that came to my mind. And then what it does in the workplace is it increases engagement. It also increases trust.
Mm.
because that's what you're building when you provide the positive to people. And then the other thing that I see happen is that it also increases productivity.
Yes.
So those are, to me, kind of the three key things that came to mind when we started talking about using pop, from a business perspective.
And
So
when I
let's
think of
move
it,
over to the life perspective.
yeah, so when I think of it from the life perspective, one of the things I love about Geminis and the Gemini effect is that every single one of us at some point or another has a business and a life, right?
Yes.
Most of us have to work and we have to go home, but we're the same person. And so when I think of pop and how it works, I think of support, I think of sharing,
Mm.
that equals success. So
Mhm.
when you provide support to someone and you point out the positive, it's so important to let people study their strengths, know their strengths, and get them to point out the positive so that they can then share that with others and then get success. And I know you talk about how a lot of people focus on the negative in business.
Yes. One of the things that I love to share is the book, The Carrot Principle. And it's based on really significant research. It includes over 200,000 people, a combination of employees and managers. And one of the things that stood out to me from the book, a takeaway was, we get 100% recognition when we do something wrong, right? Think about it.
Right.
Whenever we make a mistake, we always get recognized for that. But on the flip side, when we do something well, it's 1% of the time.
It's crazy.
It's just so significant in terms of how we get recognized, and that influences what we do. So whether it's positive or negative, right? It influences our behavior. And so if you get more negative feedback, that's what you're going to create. You're going to create more negativity. If you can
Yeah.
focus on the positive, like you said, what people do well, what their strengths are, that's what ends up happening. You
Yes.
will reinforce that behavior and you will get more of that, and as a result, greater success.
Yeah, my son's English teacher in ninth grade, he had a first period, he had her, and
Mhm.
Mrs. Miro would ask everybody in the class to write down on a piece of paper something positive about someone else in the class. And then at the end of the day, at the end of the period, she would give them out. It started off their day. It was such a simple act of pointing out the positive. And you don't know who it was from. It was anonymous, but you knew that someone in that class had took the time to write something nice about you. And we've
Yes.
taken that and used that in my family. We now have pop days during COVID.
Mhm.
We're looking at, sitting at the table and tell us something positive, either that happened to you, something positive about someone that's at this table, and let's turn things to positive because there's so much out there that is distressing at this moment that
Mhm.
you have to find them. Have you found things that are helping businesses to pop during COVID?
Mm. Yeah, there's something similar, certainly, that I've done prior to COVID, but would certainly encourage all managers to do this. And that is something similar to what you described, where if you have a team of employees, or it could be just one, it doesn't,
Mhm.
the size of your team or the number of your employees doesn't matter. It's that you take the time to let everybody on the team say something positive about each person on that team.
Love that.
Oh, it is so powerful.
Yes.
Just the act of that, right? And letting people know what is positive about them, what is good about them.
Yes.
It really demonstrates how much you value people. And I always say, at the end of the day, that's what people want to know, right? That we
Yes.
care and that we value them. So it can
And
be
it,
a very powerful exercise, certainly at any time, but especially now, because to your point, right, the amount of negativity that we're surrounded by is enormous. So you want to try to offset that. And I always say, if
absolutely.
managers can focus on the positive, do pop, right? 51% of the time, right? So, I call it tipping the scales. And so if you can achieve 51%, you don't have to do it 100% of the time, but if you can tip the scales, you will make a significant difference in the lives of your employees.
Yes, it's interesting. Last week, 3 different days, I got one day I got a letter from someone that I used to work with for about 6 months 2 years ago. I got a letter in the mail just out of the blue, just thanking me for being who I am. Then I got a gift on Friday, which was this handmade heart from my friend Sam Willing. And it touched my heart because someone took the time. It was small things of pointing out the positive at this moment that were needed. And it was such simple acts of kindness and optimism and positivity. And I think that that's what we have to bank on right now, because one of the things I love to say is there are 3 things you can control. The first is attitude, the second is attitude, and the third is attitude.
Agreed.
So when you can pop and you can point out the positive as much as you can, it's not going to happen all the time, as you said, but when you can specifically tip the scales and work on that, it's going to make a difference in your life and the life of the people surrounding you.
Right. And the other reminder around this is the impact it has versus the cost, because this doesn't cost us anything. And it takes a very short period of time. In less than 30 seconds, you can practice pop.
Yes. And that's one of the things that I love about my affirmation work that I do, because each person gets their own affirmation statements and a story, and it points out the positive. One of the things that we have are, when I'm writing my workup, I have a list of phenomenal words and poison words. And when the client says the poison words, they don't come anywhere near their affirmation statements or their stories. That's out. We focus on the phenomenal because we're pointing out the positive.
Right. Yeah. It changes people's lives. It can be, it can be transformative for some people. And if you do it consistently, that's what's going to happen.
Yes. So true. True. So do you have a quote that, me?
Yes, you are the queen of quotes, as we say. But, when we were discussing the format of this, we said, we did want to share a quote that would represent what we're talking about before we wrap things up. So I have a quote from Helen Keller. And we also learned, right, recently that she is born in the Gemini birth month of June. So the 3 of us are Geminis, right? So she says, optimism is the faith that leads to achievement. Nothing can be done without hope and confidence.
I love that. And hope is such an important part of that, because I think that when you're thinking about optimism, that's part of it. You can be positive, but it's the hope that gets you to be optimistic and move you forward. And I came up with a quote by one of our guys that we both like, which is Abraham Lincoln.
Yes.
And it says, we can complain because rose bushes have thorns, or rejoice because thorn bushes have roses.
I love that.
It's so true. And it goes to who, we're talking about, right? We are looking at rose bushes with thorns that have thorn bushes with roses. And we just wanted to come to you today and share a little bit of gems from the Geminis in business and life. And we hope you enjoyed this, and we look forward to bringing you our next topic in another week. Have a great day.
Thanks everybody for joining us.